Hey, we are live. This is the Sound Advice live streaming podcast. I am Justin, also known as the DIY Audio Guy. And today I'm joined, as always, by my partner in crime, Toyd's DIY Audio. And today we have a special guest. We have the one and only Trevor Moon, YouTube extraordinaire and Facebook guru, runs the All Things Car Audio Facebook page. Trevor, how are you doing?
I'm all right.
Good. How about you, Nick? How are you?
I'm good, and I hope all of us had a great Easter.
Easter was pretty good this year.
I ate a ton of candy, and I'm going to buy bigger shirts now.
Yeah, you ate so much your screen is frozen.
Right?
Oh, my screen's frozen.
Oh.
So usually about this time of the day is when the internet gets really slow around here. Everyone gets home from work and jumps online and bogs the internet down. So if I happen to disappear, then just, I don't know, carry on without me. Checking out who all is in the chat. Bobby B is here. Get Some is here. I see JD America. JD America is one of my patrons. He joined Patreon team a little bit ago. Michael Groves, Alexander Guzman, Barney Kilder. I don't recognize that name. That might be a new person in the chat. Living Loud with Andy is here. Good to see everybody. El Fuego is here. Good to see you, El Fuego. I hope you're feeling well. That's not El Fuego right there. I hope everybody is doing well. Marty Jr. 540, good to see you too. So it's good to see we got a good crowd in the chat. So
yeah, a lot of faces I know over there.
Excellent. I figured there's probably a lot of people watch all of our channels, and you probably noticed some of the names in the comments and stuff. So
for sure. Absolutely.
You invite him on, talk to him.
All right. And we lost Justin already. Justin, are you there? So, Trevor, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Well, what do you want to know?
Well, just tell us about your Facebook page. You also have a YouTube channel, which a lot of people don't realize. He has a YouTube channel actually called Trevor Moon.
Yeah, it's just my deal there. I used to been doing YouTube for just a little bit. I'm not exactly a guru or anything, but yeah, just my YouTube page, and it's All Things Car Audio, and I changed it now to be the official page of the group. So I don't really post any personal videos. It's just sort of my thing. I guess like the OGs, done it that way back in the day. We have the All Things Car Audio Facebook page right there, and so I kind of just play between the two, and I post things here and I post things there and do that kind of thing.
So first, before we go any further, first of all, David K, thank you so much for the super chat. He said, "Good evening, everybody. Happy Easter." Late, and don't forget to hit the like. You're only late by a day, David. You're close. I mean, maybe it's Sunday somewhere still. I don't know.
Right?
Probably not. Yeah, I don't really know how the time works in different countries, so could be.
All right, I think I'm back. David K, thanks so much. We appreciate those super chats. They mean a lot to us. So Trevor, here's the thing. Nick, here's a question I've got for you. You've seen a lot of Trevor's videos. What is the Trevor Moon video that stands out that you would like to ask Trevor about and talk about? What's like that one video you've seen that you think is awesome?
I do want to bring that up before I go there. I do want to say this too, because Trevor and I were both talking about this beforehand, and I think what's cool is all three of us have been in audio for a while now. Now I'm mainly more home audio, Trevor's more car audio, and Justin's kind of a mix of both. He's the mutt of the group, and and the cool thing about it is that we said is like we have learned so much from when we first started to now. It's pretty neat to be able to learn that. And one of the things that I learned from watching his channel was the bass knob. Now, you showed this video, it's probably a few years old now or something, that you had the bass knob, and I think it was on a CT Sounds amplifier, and it was showing clipping, but then you hooked your oscilloscope up to see if it was actually clipping or not. You came up with some pretty interesting results, and that to me was pretty eye-opening video.
Yeah, it's very interesting how sensitive the knob can be. I mean, if the little red light's coming on, you're just barely clipping. It's more like a THD sort of. So they should almost call it like a distortion light or something. Because on your lower frequencies, you're not going to hear that little red flash. You're not going to hear that at all, and it's not even going to damage your equipment if it's on all the time. That obviously can. So if your amp is sized appropriately and you never see the light, you're always in the green.
Yeah. So what you were doing is you were showing that, like, on an oscilloscope, if it's clipping, our waveform's going to start to level off. Right? It's not going to be that nice round hump anymore. It's going to start leveling off. And you were showing that at that point it wasn't clipping yet of the amplifier signal. And I find that interesting because I agree with you. There's some people that disagree with this, by the way, but according to a lot of experts, you can get up to 10% distortion in your bass frequency until you can start really hearing it actually come forward. Where if you're listening to something, your higher end frequency, that's a much, much lower number.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. You have to have, less than 1% on your full range frequencies. On the low end, it kind of muffles it just a little bit. The cone can't react responsively enough to make those little changes be audible in most cases. But I think Tony DeMore told me that 5% is sort of the threshold between you're doing too much. So in his case, if 5% clipping is too much, it's damaging beyond that point.
You're talking about actual clipping. I was talking about total harmonic distortion.
Distortion, yeah. So distortion can be muffled, but clipping is just, that's where subs go to die, right?
Yeah. Is that what you think? That most people, is that where most people you think are ruining their subs, is because they're clipping their amplifier?
I think it's the extent people are clipping their amplifier, because if you listen to a clip signal in the trunk, it does appear to be louder, and people are going to try to get the most they can out of their setup, and maybe they're not realizing that they are totally flattening out their waveform, which just builds heat in the woofer. So I think that's where most people damage their equipment. I've severely overpowered. Actually, you can see on the wall right there, I have a 4,000 watt amplifier. I think I dynoed it at right at 5,000 watts, 4,990 something watts, and I power little bitty speakers with that.
Because so why don't you tell people why you can do that without damaging them? Because I think that's somewhere where a lot of people get confused, that they think if you have this huge amplifier hooked up to these small speakers, you're going to blow them immediately, right?
Yeah. So for testing my mid range, I have this 100 by 4, and it makes around, I think it makes 400 watts bridged. So I use that to test mid range and stuff like that. 400 watts is plenty of power at 4 ohms to test a mid range, but I can crank that all the way up to the point where the speaker will fail if I wanted to, which is what I need. And same thing with the subwoofer amp there. I can kill that big woofer behind me with that amp if I wanted to, but I can also play a little bitty woofer and not damage it, because you can always turn the big amplifier down, but you can't always turn a little amplifier up. So you can always restrict that threshold and bring that level down where everything runs nice and cool, nice and clean. But you start to push things beyond the limits of the amplifier, beyond the rails, and that's when you start to flatten that wave out and you start to cause inadvertent heat in the coil.
So in your opinion, it's better to get a bigger amplifier than too small of an amplifier. You can always go a little bit bigger, but going too small could be detrimental because of clipping.
So one of my heroes, Mr. Rockford, before he passed, we're talking 20 years ago. Love the guy. He said 10%. You want 10% headroom. That was 20 years ago. These days, I think 30% headroom. But 10 is a good number, at least 10% headroom. If you've got 1,600 watts worth of subs, two 800 watt subs, maybe get a 2,000 watt amp. Don't get a 1,500. It's similar, 15 versus 16, but you want to go a little bit more if you can.
Let me take a second, interrupt, and say thank you to Get Some for the $20 super chat and the invitation to everyone to bring the rain. So thank you very much for that rain. We appreciate it a lot. We got a lot of rain over the weekend here, but we'll always take some more.
Justin, you better get a hat, dude. If it's going to rain this much, you're going to get a hat on.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, we lost. I should have cut him off. Now we lost him.
I feel like he seems like one of those Davy, or what they call it, Indiana Jones fedora kind of guy.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah, we're like, yeah, or even those real big sun hats. I could see him with a real big sun hat. Too. Yeah, like a sombrero. Yeah, I can see him with a sombrero on there. Oh, jeez.
I would pay to see him wear a sombrero.
Okay, I want to ask this because, all right, I want to get your opinion on this because me and Justin talked about this. JD America said, especially with impedance rise, what do you think about that?
I've got a whole. Okay, so I feel like I have a very in tune understanding of impedance rise. Probably, I would say better than most of the people with those comments. Shout out to the guy with talking about impedance rise. It is a real thing, but I think some people take it a bit farther than maybe they understand. The worst thing that I hear is when people say after impedance rise, you'll never see X ohm load, which is totally crazy. When the woofer is not moving, when the cone is still, your impedance is a resistance. When you start to move this cone in and out, that's when it starts to act more like an impedance. For every split second that this woofer is still, and you have it wired, say, half ohm, quarter ohm, it's going to see quarter ohm at the amp every single second. Your test measuring equipment may not be able to pick that up. But for a split second, you're drawing half ohm, quarter ohm, whatever, through the entire system, and you're over current. You're drawing more current than you're supposed to through the amplifier than it may be rated for. So that's to me that
you're arguing that every time the sub goes back to center, as it you're playing a 60 hertz sine wave, when it goes back to center at that point right there, it is at
no. It's on the hit, right?
Okay.
Boom, boom, boom from a stop. That's why you see guys doing burping. They're wiring quarter ohm. They ease into, because the math is, the product of the ohm load and the voltage draws the current. Well, when you're turning it up just barely, you're starting to get them moving. Well, now your voltage is very low, so your current's very low, so your amplifier can handle that. So when they're burping and they slowly bring that up, they let the impedance rise to allow the full voltage of the amplifier to allow to combat that rise. But if they were playing that in a musical application, just like you would normally at the volumes that they burp at, it could overdraw the amplifiers to a level.
But that's the key. You said at the volumes they burp at, because the way that you burp in a competition, SPL competition, is nothing like you would.
We'll fill in the blank. I'm going to say what he was going to say is like how you burp at your house or normally would.
Well, so when you have a competition rig that's also a music rig, say a 6 order, etc., a lot of times they will purposely, tone the knobs down just a bit to prevent exceeding the current of the amplifier. But in everyday world, with people just playing their systems, they're not minding their P's and Q's all the time, like someone in a competition environment would with a 6 order with 2 peaks. So you're combating impedance rise in multiple ways. So when you play at your tuning frequency, at your box frequency, you're going to have the minimal amount of rise, and whatever that number is, that's sort of the best you're going to get. When you start to play away from those frequencies, too high and too low, the impedance will rise a lot more. So it's really important that you choose the music you like to listen to and build your box and your subwoofer around that type of music to also combat that rise from the start.
And I really hate it when people don't mind their P's and Q's. That's like my least favorite thing.
I mean, people can do whatever they want.
I'm just saying. What is going on with I feel like Justin is schizophrenic today, man. I don't know if he wants to be on or off.
I'm muting my camera with the hopes that will improve my connection. I'm watching the little monitor where it's got these 3 little bars on it, and when it gets down to nothing, I hit the camera to see if that helps, see if I can save some bandwidth. I don't know what it is. I think it's just that time of the night people get home and get on the internet, and most of the time my internet's just fine. And usually it's rough the first 15 minutes of the show, and by 20 minutes in, I'm usually okay. I'm sure someone in the house is probably playing an online game, and someone else is probably streaming a TV show, and so forth and so on. I got a household full of people out there using the internet, so I guess maybe it is time to. Unfortunately, I can't blame StreamYard. StreamYard has a pretty solid system. So, all right, I got some questions in the chat that I want to throw at you here. And would love to know your opinion on these things right here. Taylor asked the question, got a box with two 18s, it's 10 cubic feet, and a slot port is tuned to 32 hertz, but the port volume is very, very low. And I'm assuming, I don't know if he means the size of the port opening.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
I don't get port noise. Is there any good reason to increase port volume? So the size of the port opening, port area is what I'm assuming he's saying. And so I'd love for y'all to give a shot answering that question.
So if your port's too small and you're getting a lot of choofing, aside from the choofing, you're actually acting more like a sealed enclosure than you would even a ported enclosure. But if you're not getting any choofing, I mean, if it's right there, obviously if your trunk's closed, this, that, and the other. But if it's in the open air, there's really no need to increase it. You could model it in WinISD and see what it's going to do to your stability. But I think you want to be sort of too small and then just big enough to where the speed of sound drops off, and then that's where I leave everything. That's where I start designing stuff. So it sounds to me like his port may be actually pretty good.
I mean, if you don't have port noise, there's no problem. There's no reason to change anything.
I'm gonna disagree because he just said his port is 2 inches wide and 5 inches deep for two 18s. He's getting chuffing. I don't get. I know he says he's not getting any, but he's getting some.
Well, hold on a second, because you would have to know which 18s, because if they don't move a lot of air, they don't have a lot of VAS, then you don't need a large port. So
okay, yeah, I'm going to assume that if he's having two in his car, that they're not going to be PA subwoofers. They're something else.
So a guy came to my house one day and had some Pile Blue Wave or something like that. There's like 150 watts apiece, 15s, and he thought they were the greatest things in the world. And
okay, I guess I've never seen anything like that before.
I don't know. You gotta ask. Okay, you said they're SDR. So SDR 15s, they have a very low VAS. They don't move a lot of air, so that could be exactly what we're talking about here. You're talking about a 600 watt 15. There's a lot of moving mass. The woofer just not going to physically move enough air, down that choke point that quickly. So he may not be noticing near as much as if. So
this is here's where I want to go with this. I think it was Jason had said that he'd seen some videos and some content on this, and there's a rule of thumb that I hear people throw out there. And the more I think about it, the more I think these rules of thumb, you need, X square inches of port area for a given number of cubic feet of airspace. I have no idea where those rules have come from. I hear people throwing them around. I see it written on websites and forums, but I've yet to find anyone linked to an authoritative test or reference an authoritative source on you need blank square inches per cubic feet. And what you're saying is that's not the right way to look at it, because it has to do with the parameters of the subwoofer. How much is it moving, right?
Yeah, the VAS is the volume of air that the entire piston, when it moves up and down, it displaces a certain amount of air. That air has to go somewhere. When it goes into the box and it creates that shock wave is going to put that same amount of air out the port.
Okay, so yeah. I'm confused. I thought VAS was one of the teal small parameters. I thought that was the equivalent compliance of the air suspension. I think you're talking about VD, the volume displaced, right? Because you've got the VD is so there's the surface area of the cone multiplied by the excursion.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, okay. The VD, okay. The SD, the VD.
Yeah. So I wasn't trying to catch you. I was just wanting to make sure I had that understood it correctly.
So
that's exactly right. I agree with you. It's how much air is the sub pushing is the thing you've got to keep in mind, because if it's pushing a lot of air, you need a big port opening. It's not the amount of air in the box that matters. It's how much the cone's moving.
I agree with 100% of that. And usually you can use a program like Basebox Pro or WinISD or something like that to get a good idea based on how much power you're giving it. I still have a hard time with 218s using a 2-inch port. My assumption is the 2-inch port is probably it. I'm going to guess these are in a trunk or something facing somewhere so he doesn't hear the chuffing. But I guarantee if you took it out, put it in a home or something like that, you would have to hear the chuffing. I don't know.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. He's not hearing it from back there.
Yeah, he's not hearing it from where he's at because that's a really like we're talking about like this big of a port, right? For like,
2x5. I mean, I don't know. However he's doing it, it seems a little small.
Well, he said 2-inch by 5-inch, which to me, he said 2 inches wide and 5 inches. So I'm guessing a 2-inch square, 2-inch square, 5 inches deep. No, 2-inch by 2-inch, like square.
Oh, that can't be right.
Yeah, there's no way. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like,
2-inch by 5-inch. So that's 10 square inches of port opening. I mean,
it could be 2 inches by 5 inches deep by, however wide or whatever. That's why we for area.
That's why I'm saying that that's why I'm thinking it must be 2 inches by 2. He could clarify that, but because you're right, because you have to go by height, width, and depth, right? So maybe we're missing the height. Maybe the height is
potentially
18 inches high or something.
So Magic had thrown up a comment. Why does it have to be an authoritative source?
He said 2 by 24 by what? 5 inches deep. 2 by 24.
Oh, 2 by 24. Okay.
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. Like if he's not hearing it, it's not a problem. But 2 by 24 is 48 inches of port area, which if you go by the rule of thumb, that should, that'll put you somewhere around 3 cubic foot or more. Which he said he had 10 cubic feet.
I completely agree that he probably wouldn't hear anything at that size. But when he first said 2-inch by 5-inch, I'm thinking like a 2-inch circle, right? And I'm like, there's no way.
24
it's
even seems
that's 2 inches wide and 5 inches deep and runs the whole height of the box.
Yeah. So
let me answer Magic's comment real quick, if y'all don't mind.
Wait, hold on. He's still got something to say about it. I want to hear what he has to say.
Go ahead, Trevor.
Okay.
Here's what Trevor says.
In his situation, he's got 2 inches by 24, or whatever he said. He's got 48 inches of port area. With his SDR woofers, he probably doesn't hear any chooping. But if he was to upgrade to something that displaces a lot more air, that port is not going to be adequate, and it's just not going to work the way he wants it to. So you almost have to upgrade the subwoofers and the box at the same time at that point.
So let me answer Magic's comment right here. Why does it have to be an authoritative source? Can't humans test this over time and come to their own results? You don't need to be a scientist to find out what works. I agree. You don't need to be a scientist to find out what works. And I agree that people can test. But when you are trying to prove a point, there are several ways you can find evidence to back that up. One of it is your own testing, your own math. And the other one is where you found someone else who did the testing and did the math. And I can't find anyone who did any math to say you need XYZ square inches per cubic foot. There's no one who's ever tested that and proven that number works.
So I'll give you an anecdote for that. DC Audio. I spoke to one of the engineers at DC Audio back in the day. He was the one who told me personally, just go with 16 across the board. It's a safe number. It works. If it's too big, the woofer's not really going to care, right? You're never going to find a situation where the woofer thinks 16 per cubic foot's too big. But then again, it's almost going to be borderline too small in even some of the biggest situations. So I think that's why they sort of say that 16 on the high side, but then maybe you can get away with as little as 12 on the low side. So I think that's why people say 12 to 16. I personally use 12 to 16, and it works. It definitely works.
What I do is I model it in WinISD, and I make it as big as I can possibly make it and still fit it in the box. I mean, because every time you make the port opening bigger, you got to make the port longer. And so the limit is always how long is that port inside the box. You got to wrap the port 4 times around the inside of the box. It's not feasible. It's not reasonable. And you just deal with chuffing at that point. But you make it as big as you possibly can.
Another anecdote is when I just dropped a YouTube video a few months ago building a custom subwoofer box for 3 to 8-inch woofers. And I show in there where I have the old one is a box for 2 8-inch woofers. And the airspace was a little big and the port was a little big because that's what I could physically fit within my space. So I aired just a little bit bigger on both the port and the volume just a tiny bit. And the new one, I had to choke some of that down just a little bit to make my math work with everything. So originally I was on a little bit of the high side, and now I'm just a little bit on the low side. So that's trade-offs you have to make whenever you're designing something.
But ultimately, it's about how much air the subwoofer is displacing, not about how big the box is.
Yeah, you have to be able to move the air from inside the box to the outside of the box. Absolutely.
This may
And then
not
back
make
in immediately.
As I say, this may not make as big of an issue in car audio, but I know in home audio, one of the things that we talk about too, which is where Justin and I differ a little, is if you make the port too long, then you have to worry about resonances. And what we talk about is first port resonance, and it depends on the woofer. It depends on a lot of things, but so I always say, if you're concerned with sound quality, you also want to pay attention to your first port resonance as well.
Well, I think Brian Steele is always a good source of information here. He knows what he's talking about, and that higher order port resonance is a real big deal if you're making that home audio speaker. I don't think it matters so much in a subwoofer because it's going to be like 800 hertz or something, right, Nick?
No, it's not. It can be easily 120 or anything. I try to leave it double whatever I cross it over. But I've definitely seen some as well. It depends on the thing though with car audio. I think most of the time is that most people are tuning into 30 to 40 hertz, so their first port resonance often is much higher because the higher you tune, the higher your first port resonance is, right? Because also length of vent and everything. But I'm sorry, Trevor, you were trying to say something. I didn't mean to cut you.
Well, so what you're saying is very important, right? But also what Brian Steele is saying is also important. So car audio and home audio differ, I think, based on two things. One, home audio, you're getting a lot more bandwidth out of a driver, right? And you're trying to use the enclosure to extrapolate that bandwidth and keep everything at sort of more flatter volumes. Whereas in a car, you're separating your frequencies out more so, and you're playing things more too far out of their sort of the flat band that you're expecting in a home audio. But also one thing I think I've realized over the years is the convergence points are much different between home audio and car audio. A little bitty speaker like my Polk Audio towers here, they're going to make their low frequency is going to travel a lot farther, and the convergence points where they meet are much farther away, so they sound more pleasant to the ear. Whereas in the car, you're trying to overcompensate from the lack of distance. So the frequency the bandwidth is so long in some of those frequencies that you almost have to, you're not catching it on the quarter wave. You're catching it somewhere on the trough, and you have to provide more power to the system to try to get more of that effect that you're wanting. So there's different sort of perspectives when you're designing such a thing.
Excellent. Justin is muted. I don't know if he knows he's muted. He does this a lot. He mutes himself and then he forgets. And then we see him talking and we're like, Justin, we can't hear anything.
But I wasn't talking that time. So I was just kind of giving I'm trying to visualize that, and I'm going to need a little time to kind of chew on that, I think. So, but the car versus the home environment we talk about a lot is so dramatically different. It's every speaker is in the wrong place in a car, but in a home environment, you can put them in the right place. You can, space them out where you need them to be to get the best sound.
So convergence points, you can think of the subwoofer crawl when you're talking about convergence. Right. So
you just you can't do the subwoofer crawl inside the car. You can move it around a little bit in the trunk. That's about it. You can't do the crawl.
What I'm saying there. So you can't just put a speaker where you need a speaker to go in a car. Oftentimes the staging is just terrible, and the subs are right there when they need to be 40 feet behind you. That's why whenever you're trying to pick up on either on the high wave or on the trough, your SPL that you're going to feel is going to be sort of some ratio of that, right? So I think that's why a lot of people sort of overcompensate and sort of squish the frequencies down so they can put as much power into a narrower band as possible in a vehicle where you just wouldn't do that in a home system.
I want to circle back around to what we were talking about earlier with the gain setting, if you don't mind. Y'all were talking specifically about how much distortion a subwoofer can handle. and how much overhead that you needed. Give yourself 10% overhead. A subwoofer can handle 10% distortion. That's different from gain overlap. Trevor, what's your take on gain overlap?
Well, I've heard a lot of very intelligent people tell me different perspectives on gain overlap. I particularly don't care for gain overlap, but you shouldn't. I don't think you need a lot of gain overlap if you have a lot of headroom. So I trade the two off. I take away my overlap and I add headroom. But that's not a perfect world. That's not a situation that everyone sort of can go by. So I can't really tell you to just go with a 0 dB and overcompensate with too much power like I do here. But I have a lot of experience in that sort of environment, so I don't really have a lot of problems on that hand. But Tony DeMora said that it was 5% is a reasonable overlap because of the dynamics of speakers. The few times it's gonna clip may not matter because you can just turn it down a little bit on the dial. Sort of, he wants you to sort of 3/4 rule. You turn the volume up 3/4, and if it's not loud enough, you turn it up more, and you're using the dial to do that.
Right. The 3/4 rule. I've made good use of that in a couple of videos. So
Yeah.
when I first started doing this, I got an oscilloscope and was setting the gains with the oscilloscope. I wasn't doing any overlap at all. And then Steve Mead actually sent me an AMM, the DD1 Plus. And so then I started playing around with that one. And that one is designed specifically to kind of do the math of the overlap for you. So you can dial in the exact amount of overlap that you want. And what I have found is that I tend to agree now setting my system up like that given my subwoofers 10, sometimes 15 dB of overlap is okay. And given the mids and highs about 5. But at the same time, Tony DeMora and Steve Mead are indeed selling a device that's designed to set overlap. And the thing to remember about their devices is those devices ultimately aren't really marketed for us DIYers because of that price point. They're really intended for shops.
That's
and
correct.
When you're running a shop, you have to have a level of precision that maybe we don't need as DIYers, because like you said, hey, you're watching your bass now, you're watching your clip light on your bass knob, you're listening, you're paying attention. But if you're running a shop and you just put a system in a car and send someone out the door, and then the gains aren't set right and you crank it up, and they crank it up, right? The customer goes and messes with it. And then, their system blows and they come back mad at you. And so when you're in a shop, you've got a real different dynamic.
It's a good point.
I set every system that comes out of here, I set it up with an oscilloscope and right sort of to the breaking point, which puts it at about 1.5 dB overlap. That's where I leave it. I don't give it any more than that. You could, but I typically will upsell sort of a higher headroom. So I will, convince the customer that they need to spend $10 or $15 more for enough power to throw that out the window, and they're always happy in the end, always.
So you're of the opinion if you have a 1,000 watts worth of RMS power rated subwoofers that you want someone to get a 1,200 watt amplifier.
Yep, 12
so
to 1,500 watts is what I would.
Yeah, plenty of room so they can go up a little higher, and I think that's smart actually. I want to say Crutchfield recommends you can go as high as 50% over in some cases. And,
absolutely.
Why not?
I say so. Like I said, Mr. Rockford said back in the day, I've actually been to a few of his seminars back in the day when he was an old man. It was crazy. But he said 10%, sort of just ballpark. Now, I don't know where that came from either. That's sort of like your port area rule. Based on my testing, I think somewhere around 20, 30% is ideal.
So I hear that you use oscilloscope and not the DD1 mix combo that everyone else uses. Is that correct?
I have DD1 and I have oscilloscope. Actually, I have 7 oscilloscopes, and I can tell you that
7. Yeah.
Me personally, I'm more comfortable with my oscilloscope.
Okay. I'm just curious because we always have that conversation of, what's better for some people versus if you were like just a normal person buying it, would you tell someone buy a decent oscilloscope or would you tell them to buy the SMD stuff?
I would say throw the DD1 out the window, watch my YouTube video on the oscilloscope. It's $100. Go buy it. It'd be the best thing you ever spent $100 on.
Oh, it's the Lumi, right?
Yeah, Lumi.
Yeah, I have one right
yeah.
here. Yeah,
I've got one
they're
right
awesome.
I mean, it is accurate. It's 4-place decimal. It does all the stuff you want to. So why would you spend $200 on something that only sets gain when you could do with a little bit of sort of learning and bettering yourself and in your mindset of car audio and understanding your equipment? Why would you force your customer to get away from the mindset of learning, and spending more money? So you're spending more money and you're not bettering yourself. Or you can go the other way. That's kind of where I'm at with sort of the DIY. You want to better yourself. You want to spend less money.
All right, I got to ask
one
you
of my
this question.
videos, I called it the math tax.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
You buy the SMD. You don't want to. If you're buying those tools, you're paying the math tax. You can learn how to do math, or you can buy the expensive tools. Which one do you want to do? Up to you. Do what you
Or
want
you
to
can
do.
bring it to me, and I'll set it up.
Even better. Even better. And so, we would talk about this at the beginning, and you just touched on it yourself because you said, "Hey, buy the oscilloscope. The oscilloscope in the long run will teach you a lot more about your system, things of that nature," which I think is really good. And we were talking ahead of time, and I'll just say this: we were talking about when most people blow their subs, it's either because the box is designed wrong, or maybe because they're clipping or overpowering or something. It's usually user error in some way, shape, or form. And I'm not saying always, because there are definitely bad subwoofers that have been put out there and mislabeling and misleading of what a product can do and things of that nature. But where do you think people should start to be able to learn more about their system? Like, how do they do that? Besides, obviously, watch me and Justin and you.
Well, I was going to say that they're probably already, they're probably listening to us now. They're already on the right path. They're going to people who insinuate they know more about car audio than maybe they do. And maybe they're trying to leech some of that experience based off of our experiences and things that we see and the things that we say, because maybe they haven't installed over 200 to 400 different stereos in their lives. So they're obviously on their first one. So they want to sort of get some of that experience from other people. And nowadays it's too easy. You pull up your phone right here, you go on YouTube and you watch all the different videos, and they're going to realize what information is worth having, especially with the comment system these days. If you post something that's not right, the comments will let you know.
Sometimes the people in the comments don't know what they're talking about either.
Back to the Steve Meade devices. My take on them is I agree with you on that. I think the DIYer or someone who's on a budget needs to get the oscilloscope. Yes, you can use a multimeter to set gains, but just jump right to the oscilloscope because it can do so much more for not that much more money. And the thing you've got to remember about
is the biggest issue I see is poor connections, not having proper voltage at the amplifier, things like that, which your Lumi will tell you right then and there. It'll tell you that stuff.
There you go.
Yeah, because since it's also multimeter. Yeah,
it can tell you if your subwoofer's blown. It can tell you. Just the sky's the limits with the Lumi.
You can do continuity checks, right? Make sure your wiring is working, whatever.
This device right here is the one thing that has blown my mind. There's nothing on the market like this right here. There's nothing to replace this. There's watt meters that you can buy from Klein. They are not the same thing as this guy right here. So if you're gonna spend a lot of money and take the next level, besides buying an oscilloscope, buy something like this right here. Regardless of the name that's on this product, there's no better product for what this guy does right here. So if you want a watt meter, this guy to me, I don't know that I would ever tell someone they need to go out right now and buy that.
Yeah,
so
I agree with you on the handheld dyno. The handheld dyno is a fantastic tool, and if you can afford one, you should get one.
Absolutely.
Few people take time to learn an O-scope. If it's one of the guys in the chat, 100% they should get an O-scope because they hip. I don't know what that means. But if it's the average guy on the street, get the DD1.
I don't know, man.
Okay, I'm the way I like to do things is I don't like to look at things as, hey, get this or that. I like to think of it in terms of pros and cons. The number one advantage to the DD1 and the DD1 Plus is the simplicity. If the light's on, you're clipping. If the light's not on, you're not clipping, or whether 1% THD. And so you don't have to sit here and second guess. Just is it really flat on my scope? How much is too flat? If the light's on, you're at 1% THD. If it's not, you're not. And one thing I do like about the SMD tools, the DD1, the DD1 Plus, is I think they're faster. And so if you're running a shop and you're trying to get things out in a hurry, that might be a better tool. And the other thing is, again, it's the math tax. You don't have to know how things work to use them. You just know how to use it. I'll give you an example. When I was a kid growing up on the farm, I asked my dad one time, how does a hammer work? How does, I don't understand how this works. And what I meant was, I don't know why nails don't come back out. And he showed me how it worked. He grabbed a hammer, he grabbed the nail, he waxed the hammer with the nail and says, that's how it works. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. The nail stays in because of friction, and the hammer overcomes the friction when you hit the nail when you hit it with the nail. And that's the difference, right? How does the DD1 work? How does the DD1 Plus work? How do these things set the gain? Well, there's some math behind the gain overlap. The math is not terribly simple, but if you're bad at math, it's nearly impossible. The oscilloscope takes a little bit of time to learn how to use. And so that's the difference, right? If you know how to hammer a nail, you don't actually have to know how the nail works. And what kind of person do you want to be? Do you want to be someone who knows how it works, or someone who just knows how to do it?
I think
Andrew
the most.
Bolton,
Oh, go ahead.
Andrew Bolton said in the chat there, dollar for dollar, a scope is a better instrument. That may be true. However, you've got it. You're taking the dollar into consideration now. So, like Justin said, it's not usually about the dollar. Sometimes it's just about the simplicity. So that's what he says. It's the math tax. And some people are. I see it all the time. People are willing to pay the math tax. So, oblige them with a product like this. Plus, you can buy the older model like this one here, just as simple, and it's a little bit cheaper too. So you don't have to have the Plus. You can have the one. I think this is like $100 or less than $100, but that's all it does is gains.
So I think really the most important, real quick, I think the most important question that we need to ask, Justin, about that story that you just said is, after your dad hammered the nail in, did he look at you and say, nailed it?
No, because he had no sense of humor whatsoever.
Okay, well, that would have just been the icing on the cake of that story. I'm sorry. All right, now back to friction. I'm sorry. Go.
So the other thing to consider about the Pro Tools, the DD1, if I were running a shop, all of my installers would have one. One, because customers expect it and they want to see that you've used it. And two, what you got to remember about installers is there's a lot of guys working in install shops that are just top of the notch, the best ever could be. They don't need these tools. They can set them by ear and set them by ear as close as the tools can do. But there's a lot of guys working in install shops that were flipping burgers at McDonald's yesterday.
If I owned a shop, I would never use the DD1.
Really?
I would display them proudly on the wall. That's just how they work. I would say, these are the equipment that I have, and then I'd pull out probably not my Lumi, but it's not really a shop environment type tool. But I would pull out a proper lab scope and I would set it that way. But that's just me personally.
JD America says he uses the DD1 for the RCA outs. The actual plug on the DD1 is an RCA plug. You can just plug an RCA into it.
So this comes with an adapter. And that adapter goes from RCA to gator clips for setting your amplifier level, but they also, it's natively made for RCAs. So
can we change the subject again?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, Trevor, what are your thoughts on Infinite Baffle? Do you have any experience with Infinite Baffle?
I love Infinite Baffle.
JD's one of my patrons. He's been showing me pictures of his car. You can see his car in his little username, whatever his avatar. He's done some fantastic work in it. So go ahead, tell me about Infinite Baffle.
Well, I don't know that much about Infinite Baffle, but I can say this. From what I understand, what Infinite Baffle takes that convergence point sort of situation we talked about earlier, with the subwoofer enclosure and the waveguides, it takes that away. So you have many more convergence points within a small area with an infinite baffle setup. You may not get sort of the SPL out of it, but then again, if you can get cabin gain sort of where you're playing at, oh man, to me they sound amazing.
I like infinite baffle in home theater as well when you have like an attic above head or something of that nature where you can put your subwoofers above and you don't have the floor space, right? Like if you don't have the floor space, you go right ahead. And I think infinite baffle is also really nice for people that don't want to give up their trunk, right? You know, I'm not saying you can't hit the basket still, but what?
With IB, you almost have to give up the trunk, right? Because it utilizes all the space on either side of the trunk. You know, it loads equally. That's how the suspension's designed, right? So if you fill your trunk up, your IB is gonna be lopsided.
I mean, the trunk's not really fully sealed though, right? So
no, but that's the point. That's the point of the infinite baffle, right?
No, I know that's what I'm saying. You're still got.
No, if you fill it up with stuff, you know,
okay,
it's gonna lopside your woofer. It's gonna have more compression, more acoustic suspension on this side than it does on this side because it.
You know, well, first of all, thank you, Don. I was glad to show you how to use the oscilloscope, and Trevor's got some great videos on it too. So feel free to check his out and see if ours are synchronized with each other. So I would, if I had a sedan, I would try an infinite baffle. The key with the infinite baffle is to make sure you've got a good seal between the trunk and the cabin, so that you don't have the back wave coming back around and kind of canceling out the point. I'd love to get a pair of big, like 15-inch image dynamics and put infinite baffle. I think that'd be a fun thing to do.
That'd be awesome.
So I went to the SQ finals. Was actually in my hometown this past year, and they had their mid bass running IB, but with sort of the port going outside the car. They would like cut holes in the floor and they would take that back wave and just dump it outside the car. Totally. I mean, just right there in the kicks.
Which SQ finals?
I don't know, the one with all the trophies where the jail guy won. I thought that took like 2 hours.
There's 4 or 5 different associations. So when someone says they went to the finals, I'm like, which one? There's finals in every week, it seems.
Oh boy. Well, there was I don't know. There was a lot of big guys there that I didn't know until later. When I seen it come up, I was like, oh yeah, I met those guys. They were the JL Audio guy has the Triple Crown. That's all I know. If you can extrapolate beyond that, that's what I know. He won the Triple Crown this year. He won all 3 whatever bodies.
Hi-Fi Vegas said he thinks it's the Unified Finals, maybe. That sounds right.
Actually, I have a video on my YouTube channel.
Oh yeah, just check it out.
It says right there on the big banner. I have to go look at it, but it says on the big banner right there. It's in my shorts, YouTube shorts.
Well, we're gonna find that out before, and we'll tell you before this show is over.
So while he's doing that, so these guys also have big subwoofers, 15-inch, 18-inch, dual 10-inch, and they have a piece around the trunk. They would unbolt from the bottom, and it would create the IB. And then when they're traveling, they would bolt this piece back up. That would make it a sealed, would seal it up. So when they go to these shows, they physically disconnect this sort of plexiglass or whatever cover from the bottom of the trunk and allows it to port to the outside to get rid of that back wave.
Stereo Integrity has an Audi, and they've got they cut a hole where the spare tire well is, and they've got a big 18. I'm sure I've seen this online, but it looks amazing. Massive 18-inch subwoofer, infinite baffle where the spare tire is.
So they pull that off for the shows, and then they put it back on whenever they're in the environments. I think it's wicked.
I couldn't find it. I looked in your shorts. I didn't see it in your shorts, so I might be just missing it. But yeah, I didn't see it. I'm sure it's there. But I did see where you went overseas to Malaysia and saw all kinds of interesting. I didn't see that before.
That was amazing.
Were they good products or no?
Were they what?
Were they good?
Good what?
The products. Like, like that's always the concern, right? Like whenever you shop in like different countries is how good the products are.
Some of the worst products I've ever seen in my life. And then they have JBL. So, they have JBL, which they got. They don't have. There's a lot of brands they don't have. Actually, when I was there, I bought a Rockford Fosgate old like punch amplifier, and I tested it on camera. I brought it back. It was actually imported to Malaysia back in the day. Back in the 90s. It was amazing.
I always liked those Rockford Fosgate. You said Rockford Fosgate, right?
Yep.
Was it the gray and the black one that kind of looks like the fins? Yes, those are like my favorite amplifiers. That I got a car audio about that time, but those were like always my favorites right there. I was like, oh, those are so nice. I never had one though. You know who does a lot with those? Justin, is David K.
Oh yeah,
yeah. He does a lot with those Rockford. He loves those as well.
Yeah, David K is always hanging out with us in the chat. So where did Nick go? He disappeared. So while Nick's off to probably go grab a prop to show something, I want to talk about my favorite Trevor Moon video. Trevor has a video on how to carpet a subwoofer box that is fantastic. Probably the best how to carpet a subwoofer box that's on the internet. And so if you want to see a really good video on how to do that, I advise heading over to his channel and checking that out.
I have techniques my techniques for carpeting a subwoofer box, especially like that one. You know what guy told me in the comments one time? Why are you doing X with the shitty prefab? Talking about the box I just made. Talking about the one I just carpeted. That I just went through, all that time and effort making this custom box with the WinISD and all this stuff, but it looked that close to a prefab. That's what I was proud of. That they wouldn't mistake it for a prefab.
Oh, you were proud of that. I thought you were. But this is also the point where you can't like always take people in the comment sections like word for it, because they don't like. I don't know how many people have commented on my videos that I'm like, wait, did you even watch the video? Because like the first 10 seconds answered that question. Like said something about or said something about that. I'm like, what? Oh, that's funny. Yep. Told you, David K, man. I know some David K. I still can't wait for him to build that 21-inch subwoofer. I'm waiting for that still.
I think David might have a Rockford Fosgate tattoo on his arm, and I seem to recall a nice picture he's got where he's hanging out at the kicker booth at the car show, showing off his.
I actually had a Rockford Fosgate logo imprinted on my hand one time from touching one of those old Class A amps.
If they got that hot, huh?
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. Oh, wow. I should have known when I flipped the seat up. It was, one of my buddies. I flipped the seat up, and it's got the logo as impression, embossed into the seat. And so I'm like, oh, is it? It's not working. Is it hot? Yeah, it's hot. It turns out it melted the wires.
Oh, jeez. So this is when you want one of those infrared thermometers before you touch it, right?
Yeah. Well, that was before the days of infrared thermometers,
Yeah, that's a good point.
Does anybody remember the old Zapco amp set separate power supplies? I think he's talking about the ones where the power supply was a separate box in a separate case. You had a power supply and an amp.
Yeah,
I feel like I've seen Big D talk about those.
So there's a couple amps back in the day where they used to run sort of input rail voltage instead of like 12 volts in. That's a whole different era right there. When you're running the 36, 48 volts in straight from the batteries. It's actually
I've never seen
a lot of people don't do that stuff today.
Yeah, I have never seen that. So do they run like 3 watt? Like I don't understand, because wouldn't they need like 3 separate batteries, because wouldn't they be amperage strapped? Yeah.
So instead of having the power supply section and the output section of the amplifier, the power supply will step it up to say 30, 50, whatever volts. Well, they're just going to feed that the voltage into it, with either from a separate power supply of some sort, or either just a lot of batteries. Like the Banda amplifiers and the Tar amps, they run hundreds of volts into them. With just a lot of lead acid batteries in series. It's
I got you. That's kind of cool. I can see that now. That's kind of cool. I've never
it's
seen that before though.
so we take
That
12
sounds really
volts,
safe.
a lot of amperage, and we step it up to 100 volts at a lot less amperage. They're just taking half of that away. They're just starting out with 100 volts.
No, it makes sense because so for example, I do a lot of those little tiny like mini amps and I dyno test them, right? Like what you would do for like home audio, like for 2-channel amplifiers, whatever. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that the chips in there, like Texas Instrument chips or whoever you're using, Infineon, whatever chip you want, some of them in the infrastructure that they're designed in for mini amps are actually voltage strapped, right? Like the more voltage you give it, the more power you'll get out. Now you could still run like a 36 volt, say 10 amp, and you would still get more out of it running a 48 volt 5 amp because of the way that it's designed. I don't completely understand the infrastructure, but of how it works, but I found that to be interesting.
Law, right? You increase the voltage and you get the same amperage.
No, I get that part, but I'm saying they must be amperage capped because there's a certain point where you have to increase the voltage on those mini amps to get.
Let me tell you guys a really crazy story. I don't know why. Every one of my videos will load except for the one that has the, I just have a blank screen. But except for the one that has the finals on it, I can't get it to load. I don't know why. But when I was there at the finals, they would take these old Zapco DSPs, right? They run Zapco, they run Helix, and they run one other brand. And that's all they run. They would take them out of the box and modify them and increase the rail voltage, the power supplies inside of it, put in different transformers, etc., to get higher rail voltage and thus higher output voltage on these little DSPs.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, just like what you're talking about there, but they're actually modifying it to make it produce these higher outputs. And then they cap it all up and they put it back in there and they hope nobody finds out, just like.
They just sent this to me.
Is that like against the rules or something? Or
dude, there's so much stuff that's against the rules that I've seen that people are just stuffing away where the judges won't see it.
Huh.
And it's just part of it. So one guy told me, if you ain't cheating, you ain't doing it. it's just part of it. They're gonna do everything they can to get their stuff to be where they want it to be.
Well, that was Babe Ruth's famous saying. He said, "If you're not cheating, you're not trying hard enough." And it wasn't that Babe Ruth was actually cheating, but he was pushing the bounds of what was allowed, right?
Yes,
that's
exactly what they do. So like one guy I seen under this hatch, he's got a 2,000 watt amp just kind of under there, and he just covers it up. And he's like, "Yeah, I don't even want him to see it. I just want him to judge me by what they hear and not by what I got."
So David K just sent this to me, so I had to put it up on the screen just because I think it's hilarious. There he is with the with the kicker display at a show and the Rocker Fosgate tattoo. All right, you talk about the whole cheating thing at competitions. When I think about NASCAR, is quite famous for all the different ways that people do that very same thing. Back in the day, I'm forgetting the guy's name. But one of the drivers would fill the rails of the car up with lead shot to make the car heavier, and then undo a screw somewhere in the car and drain it all out. Darrell Waltrip was who it was. That was what he did. That was one of his tricks. And so he would, if you can shave a few pounds off one of those cars, just takes being just a little bit lighter to win the race. And so if you can find some way to boost
they
without people knowing,
dirt track. Oval dirt track here in my area. They're always talking about different things. They're running large displacement engines, but they're running little bitty covers and stuff on them, and just hoping they don't get caught. It's like, oh, isn't that illegal? Well, if they find out, this is that banner on that car audio. I don't know if anything from that makes sense to you, but
it sounds like it's a championship.
Well, I didn't know there was more of them or whatever, but the guy who won, the jail audio guy, I seen his name all over Facebook whenever he won Triple Crown. So, I mean, I'd have to look more into it because it was the coolest thing I've ever seen. These guys using tricks I've never even heard of before.
And that's how you win championships. That's how you win a Triple Crown. You've got to do things no one else has heard of before.
Okay, so here's the deal. You got guys over here that are talking about cutting holes and dumping the infinite baffle out. Then you got this other guy on the other side of the thing winning Triple Crown by, I just got a Jail Audio 10-inch subwoofer, and I just kind of put it in the floorboard and then tested it, and it sounded really good. So I'm going to say that, and I'm going to add another one over here. He's doing the subwoofer crawl inside his freaking car is what he did, and that's how he won. Because every amp has a built-in DSP.
Right.
Jail Audio amp.
Yeah.
Built-in DSP. So he's running only the Jail Audio amps, only the DSP. No Helix, no high voltage, none of this stuff, right? You put it in, you hit play, and whatever, I don't know what he's sending to the back. And he's tuning every channel separately, crossing left at 70 hertz and right at 80 hertz. So they don't they don't fight each other at the low frequency. Just like this stuff, like, why would you do that? Like, he figured this stuff out. So he's got this, also he showed me, he pulled out this big case and it's got this 5-head microphone array that nobody else has. Yeah, that's how he's winning.
Yeah. That one reason why I don't compete, because I mean, you've got to be serious to win. Oh
man. Well, and he was talking like all this microphone array and the software, you can't even get it or whatever, sort of one off. Some engineer he was buddies with in college built it or something. And it's like $3,500 to build it. And I'm like, okay, $3,500 isn't a lot. It's the other stuff that people can't compete with. Knowing a guy who developed it.
Right.
That kind of
right.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
So to me, that's why he won Triple Crown. He said the only reason why I win is lots and lots and lots and lots of testing. So
yeah. And the hours that go into it, and again, like you said, people and the gear's expensive. I mean, a $3,500 microphone. It's not unlike racing where you've got to, if you want to win races, you got to spend money. You've got to test and try things out and get better.
But he wasn't running W7 subwoofers, I don't think. I think he was running like W6s. He was running whatever fit the criteria, which is not necessarily the most expensive or the top of line or whatever.
So our good friend High Five Vega has made a comment. He said, you've also got to be running the preferred brand of equipment to win. You think that there's something to that when someone sees, the judge sees what gear you're running and they go, this guy's running CT Sounds. He can't win competitions.
No,
I know you're a big CT Sounds fan, so tell me what you think.
So I talked to them about that when I was there. So they said, they're brand snobs. You got to run a Helix DSP. Well, the guy who won didn't run a Helix DSP. You got to run Infinite Baffle. Well, the guy who won was running sealed, not Infinite Baffle. So all these things that people are thinking is going to get them to win. Overvolting their Zapco processors, running optical in. That's not what caused him to win. And it wasn't JL that caused him to win. People didn't say, there's far more expensive brands. They got Macintosh. They got all kind of stuff in there that one-off amplifiers, custom made, build them by hand. There's all this stuff in there. You're talking damping factor of like 5, 6, 10,000 on some of these other stuff, whereas his Jail Audio's got like 3,000, right? It's not necessarily the specs that matter. It's how it's implemented. So that was the first to show me that it doesn't matter what brand you have. So I was like, so what do you guys think about CT Sounds? I would say 5 out of 10 people are like, oh yeah, they're all right. They're pretty good. They have this particular product they've heard of that they enjoy, which is happened to be most of the time the ones I had in my trunk at the time. But it wasn't a brand. You got to have a certain brand to win is what it showed me. I don't know that CT Sounds would compete in that category. But that's also not why I buy it. So,
all right.
Yeah,
why do you like
heard
CT Sounds?
We've heard that for a while, though, right?
What?
Justin and I, neither of us have done the competition scene, but we've heard that from a couple people that's supposedly the case. So it's refreshing to hear from you that that's not the case.
Everyone said it was the case except for the winner. Tell me how
he
the guy
he might be the one that would know.
triple crown. This guy said, "Oh, well, I just use whatever works." And JL's given to me. I'm sponsored, so I just run their stuff, and I'm just going to run whatever product they sell that has the parameters I want, that I can fit in the enclosure or the environment in such a way that it works the way I want it to. Everyone said they're brand snobs, and the winner runs I honestly think JL is sort of a mediocre brand compared to some of the other brands. So you cannot tell me they're brand snobs, because dude had C2 tweeters because they had a roll-off curve that he wanted. C2 in competition.
C2 is the C7s are top of the line, right?
Yeah, so C2s are the low-end tweeters because it had a roll-off response he wanted for the environment he had it in. These are not top of the line, most expensive stuff that took home the prize. So
that's interesting, because what Justin and I we did a show kind of on this to a certain degree. It had to do with placement of speakers and things of that nature. Like, where do you place your speakers? And we talked about in the car and versus the home and things of that nature. And Justin, you showed, and I can't remember the guy's name, but you showed a guy who to me made the most sense out of any car I've ever seen, just because of the home environment that I come back from, my background at least. And he had put the mid ranges and the tweeters up on the pillars, right, and pointed them towards the listener.
So
and this was done in like the 80s, right, or something.
This was the BMW. There's this guy who had a BMW, and he actually had like a big pair of 12s that were like in the footwells on either side of the car. And at shows, he would take the fenders off to show the back of the magnets. And he had his installer build these custom pieces that would rise up from the dash. And basically what he had built was near field monitors up on the dash. And it was just, tweeter in the mid that would just come up out of the dash and aim right at your face from both sides of the car. And this was what was winning competitions in the 80s. He won so many competitions, he would tell judges, "Hey, I've won 2 or 3 this year. Don't give me first place. Give someone else a shot."
Yeah, give it to the next guy. So one thing that they all said was, they said, you want your staging up high and as far away from you as you can. And then in time alignment, put it even farther away from you. Because like I said, convergence points, right? You're
right.
The wave hasn't propagated yet before it hits you. This JL guy, they're not any of those things. They're just on the dash.
Right.
Interesting.
He's using time alignment. He can make it work.
He's doing it all in the DSP. He's doing all the trickery with know-how, mathematics, and lots and lots of testing.
Hey, Justin, Baba had a question.
He did.
Yeah, and Baba's a big supporter of us, so I'd like to answer that.
This one?
Did the winner happen? Yeah, did the winner happen to know the judges' preferences and made multiple tunes curtailed to them? Because oftentimes they do get a list ahead of time of what
they all had a list. They all had profiles. So if you ever seen a DSP, like I've got these Dayton's DSPs, they have a profile on the little knob there. You can set profiles. They all had profiles, and the judge will listen to each profile if they want to. The judge is going to play what they want to hear. So it's really just one-on-one, the judge in the car. So they're going to sort of hit you with all kind of things. And one thing they said was, you kind of just got to let them go and hope for the best. If you're not sort of going to make the cut, then you wouldn't be in that show, right? So
I do wonder this. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine.
I was going to say, I do wonder this because I know in sports and other things, for example, sometimes when someone is expected to win, they get a little leeway. At least it feels that way sometimes, right? And I always wonder, like, if you won 2, like if the third, it's kind of like, yeah, I like this, but you know what I mean? Like if there's some type of bias that maybe you're not even thinking about.
So when I was there, I asked everybody. I spent probably forever asking everybody everything. Some guys were like, "Oh, that guy down there, he's probably going to win because he's double crown already and he's got the setup and he's mad scientist." And then everyone else said, they're like, "Well, if I don't even place next to him, that's fine." There's so many people there that were like, my setup has this, 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 and this that his doesn't, and I hope mine stands out because of it. So people are trying. People understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and judges are human. I mean, they're like referees on a ball game. They have biases, right? They have preconceived notions. They, there have been studies that have shown that if you go before a judge in a trial, and if they just handed down 3 harsh sentences in a row, they might go easy on the next person. So you never can tell. There's always that kind of human factor that goes into it because we're humans.
Okay, so
right, I want to. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Trevor.
That Baba said something. He said, "Why isn't it done in the blind?"
I agree with this, by the way.
It could be in the blind. That would make things theoretically a lot more fair. However, I've seen whenever the judges go into the car, yeah, they put on a blindfold. They knock their head back and they listen to something they know. So they're listening for certain things in the car. So, maybe there's a way to that. So they know that they need to get the mind, and focus on what it really is. But maybe if you pause time and you covered everything in a blanket and you just sat them in there and they don't know whose car is what, maybe there'd be a different outcome. I have no idea.
I like this idea, what Bob is saying, though, because I completely agree with this. Why isn't it done truly in the blind? And I mean, literally all you'd have to do is blindfold the person, unless they know, like what the seat feels like or something of that nature. Not let them see the cars necessarily ahead of time or something. If we're only going off sound quality, not necessarily the looks and everything. I mean, obviously, if the looks have something to do with it, then they have to look at it.
It's a show, right? It's a competition. It's all of those things. That's what the one guy was telling me. It's not just the sound. It's how you implement it. It's how you did this, how you did that, Because, like I said, the judges are human. They want to see that cool tricks you're using to try to combat some of these sounds, some of these anomalies.
Yeah, I'd like to see them see that after they listened to it, like after they judged it. After they judged it, oh, that's why it sounded. I do like the idea that Baba says. I don't know. I've never judged a competition, but I like the idea of that.
Yeah, it's definitely.
It seems like if you were doing a home speaker competition, it'd be easier to do blind judging, where you could have an acoustically transparent screen, roll the speakers behind them, play them, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think these are good points, though. I like these points.
I'll make one in a minute.
Gentlemen, I am looking at the clock, and we're going over a little bit of our usual time. We keep these to an hour now. Whenever we're over, if someone wants us to keep going, just a super chat will usually keep us motivated to keep going a while longer. But it's probably about time to wrap it up. So we always end the show. It's a tradition that High Five Vega started back when he streamed with us by asking us what we wanted to brag about. I think the word he used was pimp. What do you want to pimp before we leave? What do you want to brag about? What do you have coming up, Trevor? What's the next video in the bin that you want people to make sure they catch when they subscribe to your channel?
So I don't really know that any of this would be sort of bragging. My car is already set up with the box that I recently built. I have a couple different video ideas that I'm coming up with. The problem is right now I'm spending all of my time working on my pickup. I've got a 96 F250 that I'm building 8 12-inch woofers in the back. Hopefully I can get some help designing the enclosure here so I get the maximum performance out of it. But basically we're putting 8 1500 watt RMS woofers in where the back seat space would go. And I guess it'd be a wall, right? 8 mid-ranges, 8 tweeters, 8 woofers, about 20,000 watts. And the whole goal is I just want to show people that I don't know that CT Sound is going to win any competitions, but they're definitely going to be loud, and they're definitely going to be you're going to see the name a little bit differently when you start seeing some of these videos come out, because I've never seen anybody put the effort, because I've always said, regardless of the brand, right? I'll show you an example right here. You got 2 separate brands right here, right? 2 somewhat known brands. You take 10 of these, they could do something cool. I just don't think anyone's taken 10 of these yet. You know what I'm saying? So I'm thinking you've seen people do this in other situations. So I'm just going to use this brand just to prove a point, just because it's cool,
Yeah.
Then I'm probably going to rip it out and do something totally different.
That does sound cool. I want to see it.
20,000 watts, 812s. You can't go wrong no matter what the brand is.
You know what I find interesting lately? I've been the last couple, I don't know, months. I've been dealing with 21-inch subwoofers, and a company sent me a 15-inch woofer, and I opened it up, and I was like, That's not a 15. That looks like a 12 or something. And then I looked up, and I'm like, no, that is a 15. Never mind. But it just feels so small now. Like it's weird because me and Justin talk about this a lot. Like 12 inches back in the day, like when we first were into car on, that was like a big, like that was a good size subwoofer. I mean, that's what and 8s were like what a lot of people were repping. So then you had the 12s, and you're like, oh man, I got a 12. Now I look at a 15 sometimes. I'm like, no, that's not a 15.
So,
that is a 15.
This is a 12-inch woofer behind me, a rather ignorant 12-inch woofer, 3,000 watts RMS. When I got into car stereo and I graduated from the beginner phase, I run a 3,000 watt 12-inch woofer, a single woofer in my car on a very well designed, very well tuned box, and it would make you sick. That's the way I rolled 10 years ago when I got into stereo. And people would swear there's 415s, this, that, the other. No, you just need a lot of what do you say, the VD, right? That you need to move a lot of air, and you need to smack it tight and send it to the cab. And I did it with a big woofer, not like this brand, but similar size and stature. So today, I still run big woofers like that because that's why I enjoy.
Trevor Moon's intro song. I like big woofers and I cannot lie.
Can't lie.
Someone in the comments said they couldn't find your channel. It's just Trevor Moon on YouTube, right?
Yep, it's just Trevor Moon, or I think the URL is just ATCA, youtube.com/ATCA.
And All Things Car Audio is your Facebook group.
Yes, I have a Facebook page and a Facebook group. It says the Facebook page says it's a car audio store, but I think that's all because it made me choose what it was. I don't actually sell things. I sell merch packs, but that's about it. And that's usually for the guys in the groups that are just diehard fans, right? So,
excellent. Nick, what do you got coming up next?
So I have in my possession quite a few really cool amplifiers that I'm going to be testing. One is what is best-selling amplifier on Amazon. It's their newest version of the best-selling on Amazon. So I'm going to test the frequency response of it. I'm going to test the output of it, and I'm also going to test the knobs. And that's bass and treble knobs. So I'll be able to show you, where the treble's going up and down, how many decibels you can get out of that, both up and down, and I'll also show you that with your bass as well, so you get an idea of what you can do and what you can't do with that. That'll be pretty cool. I also have a video coming out, two other videos that I think you guys will be really excited about. One video is what I think is the best, most powerful amplifier on the market, bar none, for home audio. And when I say powerful, I'm not talking about watts. I'm talking about what it can do. This thing has a DAC built in, and it's inexpensive. But it has a DAC built in. It has DSP built in. It has Bluetooth receiver and transmitter, meaning that after you're playing, if you want to play at night, you want to put Bluetooth headphones on, you can put it on. It'll mute your speakers. You can hear them on your headphones. And it has HDMI ARC, audio return channel, which I don't know many that have that. So big thing on that. And then finally, I'm going to show you how to add Android Auto or Apple CarPlay to any car stereo without changing your actual stereo. So you can keep your factory look, right? But you can add Android Auto, Apple CarPlay with it. I have a 2020 Nissan Pathfinder I'll be showing you it on. It's pretty cool. I love it. I love the company that's doing this. It's a company that I'm going to start working with, and I'm pretty excited about it. So I think you guys will really like that one, especially.
Is that a drop-in replacement style?
No, it's not. It is not a replacement. It uses, so the problem with a lot of replacement radios, right? Like my particular one has a 360 camera on it. And if I put it in any type of replacement, I cannot use my 360 camera. It mutes it. I use a lot of USB ports, video ports, things like that. This actually integrates into it. It's a plug-and-play system that plugs and plays into it that then uses your screen that came with your car, and it actually then gives it Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. So, for example, my 2020 Nissan Pathfinder uses the most outdated map system I've ever seen. I don't have access to Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. I could put in maybe an obnoxious, but you and we all know this, that unfortunately, like, so many things are getting put into the electronics of the radio now that sometimes it's hard to just replace that without losing things.
Well, and I pride myself on factory integration, so I'm really got my ear to the wall on this one, because I'm trying to figure out what kind of voodoo magic you're working here, because I'm trying to figure it out.
It's pretty cool. I'll share some stuff with you behind the scenes after the show.
Sure. My car has sort of the most update system, and I really enjoy it, but I'm stuck with that. So I bought the car with the best sort of DAC built in to start off of, whereas most people don't do that.
Absolutely.
Got a question for you here. Do you have a status update for this project, Nick?
What's the status of the sub box project with base tattoo? I don't have an update on that yet. Me and him were talking about it, and I haven't got any designs from him. So I got to decide what we're going to do. If I'm just going to design the box and then he's just going to come help me build it, or what. But we are going to collaborate together. We're doing that. We just haven't had the design. But I will tell you this, it'll be a really cool design, because it'll be something similar to, and I don't mean like similar in the same essence, but it'll be something similar in the essence of the boombox build off, where I kind of went all out. It'll be something like that.
That'd be
the definitely went all out. I just uploaded this video here, y'all. Yesterday, I uploaded this. I bought this little amp from a Crutchfield at Sound Ordnance. It's their house brand. And the thing I like about it the most is just the way they kind of carry the branding. It's like a military themed branding. So the box has this piece of artillery on it. And like the amp is an M350, and the M is how the U.S. military codes their artillery pieces. And so they did a really clever job on the branding on that one. And the amp performed just fine. It's not a very powerful amp. We all love our big, powerful 20,000 watt systems, but most people are running something like this on a single 10 or a 12. And that video is doing really well, and it was a fun one to make. I don't know what my next video is going to be. I know my next project. I've got a Super Beast, the lithium battery pack sitting, and Trevor's got one too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Trevor's fantastic video on how to fix that thing so it runs 12 volts and do my version of it. I just got to copy.
I've actually got one back on the camera there.
Yeah. Oh, you got a huge lithium bank back there.
That guy right there.
Yes.
So
let me put you back on
video
the line here.
One of those guys too, but this is quite a good investment here. This Super Beast it is.
So I bought the Super Beast because if you buy a Super Beast, you can disassemble it and you can get the cells cheaper than just buying individual cells. Huh. And they're under cool. $5 a cell when you just buy the whole Super Beast all at once. And I've got a coupon code for battery hookup down in the description if anyone wants to use it. Go ahead, Trevor. Yeah, check this out. So this is nice.
This was built from a Super Beast. So these cells are from a Super Beast. I've just disassembled the Super Beast and put it into this configuration here.
Did you get those the aluminum CNC'd or what?
I machined these myself.
You machined those yourself? Wow, look at that. That's pretty impressive, actually.
So you have the equipment to machine those yourself.
Well, I know a guy.
Oh, you just said you did it yourself. No, I
didn't do it myself.
Oh, you did? On his equipment.
The guy has the equipment, okay, I'm guessing.
Got you. That makes sense. I got you. I know a guy, too. I use his CNC all the time, so I get it.
Oh,
I don't know enough people, apparently.
Oh, this is machined by hand.
I need to...
Actually. What?
It's machined by hand.
Say? Oh, that was machined by hand? Oh, wow. Like drill press type thing.
On a bridge
board. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. So you actually could... You just... turned it and it went
crank the knob until you hit the decimal that I designed. I had to do all the math and made my own prints.
Those are nice mills. I like those mills. It's so interesting. What?
Do they work?
Oh yeah. So my sister used to live in Bridgeport, Connecticut, which is where Bridgeport is from. And we went down to Bridgeport, by the way. depending on where you're at in Bridgeport, it can be a big dump or it can be nice. It's so weird. That's the weirdest place. I swear, Connecticut, it like goes in and out. But I remember Bridgeport. No, they're no longer in business though, right? I think Bridgeport went out of business.
Oh yeah, ours. I mean, they're super old.
Yeah.
But so
There's nothing.
I have
wrong with
a drawing file that I made for these in AutoCAD that has all my dimensions, and I go to my dimensions and turn the dial and do the thing and turn it and depths and heights and all that other stuff.
Oh, that's really nice. I like that.
All right.
Justin, do you have anything else, or are we leaving for the night?
I have nothing else to add. I dropped a link to Trevor's YouTube channel, so more people were looking, having trouble finding it. So it is there if anybody wants to click on that and go check out his channel. All right. Trevor, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are out.
It's the